If you've ever wished you had a podcasting pro with nearly a decade of experience whispering growth secrets into your ear, that's exactly what you'll get when you tune into Podcast Growth Tools with me, your host, Kylie Chandler. This is the ultimate show for you if you're ready to grow your podcast audience, skyrocket engagement, and turn your show into a traffic-driving, list-building powerhouse. I've been in the podcasting world since 2015, helping creators like Amy Porterfield grow their shows to over 1 million downloads a month. My superpower? Breaking down proven podcast strategies and marketing techniques into step-by-step guidance you can actually implement without fluff, overwhelm, or guesswork. On this show, we're getting real about what actually moves the needle when it comes to growing your podcast audience and using it to boost your email list growth. From actionable insights and expert interviews to behind-the-scenes secrets, I'll help you turn your podcast into a traffic-driving, list-growing machine. Grab your earbuds, hit subscribe, and let's take your podcast to the next level. Hey, and welcome to another episode of Podcast Growth Tools. So I want to talk to you about some clients who are often forgot about, some podcast listeners who you often forget about, but they are some of your warmest leads, your current audience. Truly, they're like a secret weapon. These are the people who already know, like, and trust you. They've been following you, they've been consuming your content, and are engaging with your brand, your company. And guess what? They're the perfect group to help you grow your podcast. It it truly blows my mind how often they are forgotten about. People always want to get new, which is great, but they forget that they have this pool. A lot of you have a pool of really engaged clients, customers, audience members who are already in your world, but they might not necessarily be listening to your podcast every single week. So in this episode, we're going to almost go through a little bit of a checklist packed with strategic actions that will help you promote your podcast to your warmest audience and turn them into loyal listeners. But more importantly, I want you to understand that your podcast isn't just content. It is a relationship building tool. It is a way that you can nurture and deepen that relationship. This is your opportunity to inspire, educate, and engage your audience on a deeper level. But before we dive in, here's what I want to say. Like I said, I'm bringing you through a checklist. There's going to be a lot here. I highly recommend you just start with one or two strategies from that checklist and just start to work through them little by little, implementing them and seeing what happens. I also don't recommend that you put all of these out there and then not know which one is actually driving results. So, as I always say, implement, test, track, and then decide. So, pick one or two, maybe three strategies, implement them, track them, and then decide what's working. And then you can start to implement some of the others. So, let's get into that checklist. So, number one, you have to share your podcast everywhere that your audience hangs out. So think about where they are spending their time and get creative with how you share your podcast. So here's what I mean. Let's talk about a private community. If you have a private community, whether it be a free Facebook group or a paid, if you have like a paid product that has a Facebook group, that can be considered it. If you have like a school community or a circle community, some people even just have like Slack channels or forums. Those are all great. I want you to think about how you can make it so easy for those people to find your episodes every single week. And here's what I'll say. I know some people have had Facebook groups that maybe have gone a little bit cold. Get crafty and get creative with how you re-engage them. So maybe you run a challenge for 2 weeks or something where you start to post more consistently. You engage them with fun activities, fun tips and tools. Maybe you do giveaways if your budget allows. Think about how you can engage them in a fun way, if you can gamify it. And of course, infuse the podcast. The challenge can be all around the podcast. The podcast can be the center of the challenge. Of course, I'm all about creating quizzes. So if you do have a quiz or you create a quiz or you work with me and create a quiz, this is a big part of how to re-engage them as well. People love quizzes. So if you can create buzz around the quiz in that community, that's also a great way to re-engage them and say, hey, remember, I have podcasts coming out every single week to support you with XYZ. be sure you're listening, be sure you are subscribing. Okay, so that's one way. If you are hosting any live streams or virtual events, always try to mention your latest episodes during those sessions. So if your community is already engaged, they are more likely going to check out the episode. So what I mean is if you listen to my podcast or if you work with me, you know that I'm all about tapping into other people's audiences. So if you offer somebody else's audience like a free masterclass or a virtual event, or if you could invite it to be on a virtual event, you need to be mentioning your podcast. And I like the idea of obviously giving them a free resource if you can. And within that free resource, you have your podcast, your links, everything you need. Or maybe if there is an episode that directly supports them going deeper on the topic that you're talking about, maybe just drive them to that specific episode. Okay, and then the next thing I want to talk about is if you have a membership site or a digital course site, you should be having a dedicated podcast section that complements your course content and your community and makes it really easy for them to get not only the most recent episode, but maybe you create bundles. And I'm going to go into this a little bit later in the episode, but you create bundles that align with the specific piece of content or the specific lesson or whatever it might be. So start to think, how can I infuse my podcast as often as possible in my membership site? In fact, anytime you're creating any content for your existing audience, ask yourself, is there a way that I can support them with my podcast by driving them to one of my episodes? So at the end of the day, just remember that visibility is key. The more places that you share your podcast, the more chances it'll reach your listeners. So make sure that you're putting it in front of your existing clients just as much as you are putting it on social or any of those other platforms. All right, number two, let's talk about seamlessly integrating your podcast into the content that you're already creating. So, this is where your podcast can feel like a natural part of the experience for a paying customer or even somebody who maybe signed up for a free resource. So, you can start by including it in your onboarding emails for new members, new clients, your welcome sequence, all of those work. All of those are free game. So, make sure they know about your podcast and know the value of it and know how it's going to be extra content to support them. I've gotten pushback on this before, people being like, well, I don't want to overwhelm. If I'm onboarding my students, I don't want to overwhelm them with more content. But here's the thing, if they aren't subscribed to your podcast or if they aren't consistently listening every single week, they should be because it fills in the gaps between the content that you're releasing in your course or things like that. So that's a must because they can go and they can even the other beautiful thing is they can look through your episodes and they can identify the ones that really fit where they are and what they need or what they're craving. So don't be afraid to put it on your onboarding emails. And then in terms of like your welcome sequence, of course it needs to be part of that. In fact, I recommend to my clients that they put an entire email that's devoted to promoting their podcast. In that email, it gives maybe the top 3 to 5 episodes that they should start with. It shows them how to subscribe, how to make sure that they are following, and then how to make sure that they have automatic downloads turned on, as well as the links that they need for the most popular platforms. So, Apple, Spotify, and then YouTube or whatever else is good for your audience. So, I highly recommend that for your welcome sequence. And then, like I said, I would take this a little bit deeper. I mentioned it briefly, but if you're creating a digital course or modules or lesson plans, see if you can at least find like one relevant podcast episode that you can link them to. So if you have a module on creating SEO rich show notes like I do in my low ticket offer, then at the very bottom, I'm going to say, if you want to go deeper into this, check out this podcast episode. So it's a very easy way to add extra value without doing extra work. And again, they might go through the module and they might want more. And then boom, there it is. Okay, and then this is for those of you who write blog posts and have people already going to your blog. Try to align podcast episodes with your blog. If you're not already doing that, see if you can find content that kind of crosses and makes sense promoting one another, and then put either the player on there or again just a link as simple as a link that says, hey, I recorded a podcast episode about this, I'd love for you to give it a listen. It takes you deeper into this topic. Obviously, make it sound better than that, but that's something to be thinking about if you do have a lot of blog post traffic that you have coming into your world, onto your website, definitely something to consider. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the how to. I am amazed at how many people will say, well, I actually don't know how to follow, subscribe, or how to set automatic downloads on my phone. So sometimes we have to just like teach them and show them how to. So you can do this a couple ways. One, like I said, in that welcome email in your onboarding sequence, you can just put like a step by step by step for this is how you subscribe. This is how you turn on your automatic downloads. You'll want to do it for Apple, you want to do it for Spotify. Another kind of fun interactive way that you can do this is just screen record a video. And I mean, you can make it as fancy or as not fancy as you want, and just walk them through the steps that you would take on your phone to, again, turn on automatic downloads to make sure they're following all that good stuff. So I highly recommend doing that. And I've actually done this with some clients, and people have come to them and said, I'm so glad you included that video. I actually didn't know that I didn't have automatic downloads on. And then, I was out of service for vacation or something like that. And I really wanted to go and listen to your episode while I went on a hike or something like that. And I didn't have it downloaded and I didn't have, I was already at the trailhead and I didn't have any service and I was kind of bummed out. So sometimes giving them that extra step to turn on those automatic downloads and show them how to can be really powerful. It sounds silly, but trust me, it's kind of a quick little tip to help them. So, next up, let's talk about just having fun, gamifying, building a little bit of excitement around what you have going on. So, if you do love to use social media, of course, running like a competition or a giveaway for where your listeners can share your podcast tag, like these things, people have been doing these for a long time, but it's a really organic way to engage your audience. And if you do ask people to leave you, say, a review, you could do something as simple as like create a type form and have them screenshot the review, submit it, and then you send them a free resource. So that's kind of a fun way to engage them. And that's something you can have on Evergreen at all times, where you can say on your Instagram stories or a post or something, say, hey, did you know that if you leave a review, I give a very special XYZ free resource? And then you can promote the type form to say, go leave a review, submit an image on this type form, and then I'll send it your way. And you can automate that so it sends it automatically. So that's kind of a fun way to engage people. The other thing is to use polls on Spotify. So I've talked about this before, but Spotify has some really fun interactive tools. So I recommend playing around with them and creating a couple polls in Spotify, see what kind of content they want or what they thought about the episode or anything like that. And you can give shout outs, which is really fun. But again, this is leaning into the existing audience and giving them a way to kind of communicate with you and go back and forth. And it makes them more enticed to come back and listen to more and more and more, right? Because now they've interacted with you. Spotify now knows that in their algorithm, all that good stuff. So that's something fun to do. All right, let's move on to number 5. So this is all about really meeting the people who are coming to your website. So consider how you can get your podcast in front of those people as easily as possible. So I always love to see the podcast on the homepage. Of course, this might vary depending on where it is in your funnel, but for most people, especially business owners, entrepreneurs who use a podcast type of funnel, you want it on that front page because most people are listening to podcasts anyways. If they see you have one and they didn't know, boom, they're going to be on their phone, adding it, following it. So make sure it's there. Also, I would highly recommend putting in your top toolbar, having the podcast as one of your navigation pages, one of your main pages. And then again, that's going to get people to check it out. They're going to navigate there if they're coming to your website. And then I talk about this a lot too, but if you can put a pop up that drives people to a podcast bundle of some sort, if it's your ideal customer and you create a bundle that speaks directly to them and then have that pop up for them, that's a great way to drive those website visitors who are already coming there onto your email list and then also, get them listening to the podcast. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Okay, now let's talk about your subscribers, your existing subscribers. Of course, we're always looking to grow our email list, but we want to make sure that we are also nurturing our existing subscribers. And a great way to do that is you can create and send a weekly podcast newsletter. So I love a podcast newsletter every week. I do recommend that you take it a little bit deeper and make it more story based or lesson based or things like that. Make it more than just, hey, by the way, I dropped this podcast, go check it out. Like make it engaging for them so that they're excited to read it. You're giving them lots of value. You can do that. And you can also send a podcast roundup email every single month. Or if it feels better for you and your audience to just do one a month, go for it. But what I really love about a podcast roundup email is you can feature the episodes that came out that month. And it's just a little bit more bite sized. And sometimes this works so well for people when they only do this once a month. So really identify what your audience likes and maybe you play around with it. I know that in the past, what I've done is send every single week. And then I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit low on downloads this month. I'd like to see them bumped up. So then I'll do a podcast roundup email. And, sometimes you don't even need to send the emails from that month. You can actually create a theme. So, for example, if it is, let's say it's like around Thanksgiving, and you can say, I'm really grateful for you as a gratitude. I put together a little playlist I thought you would enjoy while you're heading out to your holiday locations or plans, something like that. So you can do a themed playlist that is kind of fun. So I definitely recommend doing that. And then another way, if you do notice, hey, you know what, I'd like a little bump in downloads. Maybe you create a playlist that's themed based on one of your ideal customers. So maybe you have a couple ideal customers. I know most people I work with have like, I don't know, I'd say usually two to three ideal customers that kind of fall along different parts of the customer journey. So maybe you create a podcast playlist for one segment of those and you send that playlist specifically to them. So let's just use entrepreneurship because sometimes it's just easy. And so maybe you say, I have a bunch of newbie entrepreneurs and I have 5 episodes that would serve them really well in getting started. I'm going to segment that email list and then I'm going to send them this themed playlist with the top 5 episodes that they should binge. And again, it just might give you a little spike in downloads and it puts it in front of those people who are already on your email list, already in your world. They're like, oh, this is exactly what I needed. I'm going to go download those episodes. So something to think about. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to talk about, actually, there's 2 things I'm going to talk about before I wrap this up. And one is let's talk about personalizing and incentivizing your listeners. So I think that there is kind of, for some reason, people feel like they're just too big or too busy to spend some time in their DMs. However, this is a really great place to connect with new listeners and get them to the point where they are super fans. So if you are maybe you're a little bit smaller or intermediate size entrepreneur. I mean, if you're a really big entrepreneur, I understand this can be a little bit more difficult, but I still recommend you do this. Jump into your DMs and just start actual conversation. Like, hey, this is a mini chat. Like, this is actually me. I'd love to chat further with you. I'd love to know your favorite episodes. I'd love to know your pain points, how I can support you. And then they will actually give you tips and like guidance into, oh, I'm really struggling with XYZ. You can go back and say, oh, hey, I have a podcast that you can listen to that speaks directly to that. Or I have this free resource. You should check it out. In fact, I'd recommend sending both, right? Because you don't know if they're actually listening to your podcast. Like they might be following you on Instagram, but not listening to your podcast. So that is something that I love. Also, if you can do this and you find that you're getting new subscribers, go ahead and reach back out to them and just say, hey, I'm so glad you're on my email list. Thank you so much for joining. I'd love to hear more from you about how I can serve you, what content you're looking for. Hey, did you check out my podcast? And again, they are going to tell you in the conversation, well, I'm looking for this. And then you can kind of direct them to episodes that would serve them. So I really like this approach. I think it's great for us to kind of go back to just those natural conversations that are real. If you have a little time and space, I'm not saying you have to hit every single DM or every single email subscriber that comes onto your list. But if you can start doing that from time to time, I really, really think that you're going to start to create some super fans. And listen, having 1,000 super fans is so much better than having like 100,000 downloads where nobody's actually listening. I know those ratios probably aren't quite right, but you know what I mean. Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about. So I, in a past life, in a past career, I put together a re-engagement campaign that saved like 60,000 subscribers from falling off, from becoming totally cold. And, with certain email service providers, you can't even email those people once they haven't engaged with you for a certain amount of time. So if you are struggling with this, if you're noticing like, hey, I'm getting new subscribers, but I'm having these people fall off the back end in loads, I would recommend doing a re-engagement campaign. So if you know anything about me, you know I love email list talk. So if you want to talk about it and have coffee, let me know. I'd love it. But I would recommend putting together just a re-engagement campaign for people anywhere from 90 to 120 days if they haven't engaged with any of your emails. Be really specific. See how you can serve them, offer them free resources, grab some of your best performing emails and send them some of the best performing open rates. Grab those emails and send them and just see what you can do. And as part of this re-engagement campaign, of course, you want to be driving those people to the podcast to get them re-engaged. And this is a really great way to serve them without asking them to buy anything, right? It's like, I'm just here to provide value for you. And so get back on my email list. There is a whole strategy to this. I'm happy to share it with you. If you want to DM me and ask more about it, I can send you a voice message. But that is another way that if you happen to be somebody who is noticing that you're having a lot of turnover, people are falling off your email list because of re-engagement or because of not engaging, this is a great strategy. And I would highly recommend setting it up, taking some time and getting it set up. All right, my friends, there you have it. So again, leaning into the people who are already in your audience, who are warm leads and turning them into your podcast super fans is such a wonderful strategy that you can start today. It's not a heavy lift. It's literally remembering to integrate your podcast into your current community and content in ways that feel natural and personal as often as possible. So I'd recommend just staying consistent with this. Like do that as often as you can. Always be thinking, how can I get my podcast in front of them? How can I serve them better with my podcast content? And you will start to see them tuning into your podcast more consistently, adding more followers, all those good things. So if you love this episode, thank you so much for being here. Please subscribe, follow, leave a review, share this episode with somebody who you think would benefit from it. I'd love to hear how these are serving you. So jump into my DMs. I'm at the Podcast Marketing Hub on Instagram. If you want, I'm also taking a few new clients. So you can jump on and you can book a discovery call with me and you can head to podcastmarketinghub.com/call to do that. And thank you so much for being here. Until next time, keep growing that podcast, keep using these strategies, and I hope that you have a great, great week.